Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Neural Therapeutics webinar today, where we're going to be talking about the company. Short introduction first, and then I'll be handing over to Ian Campbell, CEO. I'm Marc Lakmaaker. I'm with AdvanceCap. We're one of the advisors to the company. We're very selective in the companies that we work with. And when Ian and the team reached out, we did our due diligence and realized that there's really an exceptional opportunity here. The World Health Organization projects that by 2030, the global economy will be impacted to the tune of about $6 trillion, with 2/3 of that related to disability and loss of work. The other stat that we ran across was that most current therapies that tackle or address mental health are not that efficacious. For instance, traditional therapies only have about a 10 to 20% positive response rate, and it takes 6 to 8 weeks at least to get there. That's worrying. If you see that $6 trillion number, you know something needs to happen, and what we have right now isn't quite working. However, there is a successful and legal alternative, and more work is being done on making the whole suite of psychedelics legal. But Ian will be talking about it as well. We're part of that. But the key thing is that psychedelics promise a much higher positive response rate and a much more rapid positive response rate. Such as the Journal of Psychopharmacology, they reported in 2022 improvements in anxiety and depression by over 67% of respondents. That's a massive difference compared to the 10 to 20% of normal traditional therapies. And this is related to mescaline, the molecule that Neural Therapeutics does their research on. So this is a significant promise of improvement, and that's really spurring on treating physicians, doctors, healthcare providers, insurance companies, payers to advocate for the adoption of this treatment. And those are reasons really that led us to believe in the opportunity that Ian will be talking about. Another very important thing for us was the team. Ian, as I mentioned, will be giving a presentation. He's the CEO. Also on the line, we have John Durfy, who's currently the CEO of High Fusion, from which Neural Therapeutics will be spun out of. Beyond that, we've got an exceptionally strong scientific team. Starts with Professor David Nutt, who is probably one of the most highly regarded scientists within the psychedelics field. Dr. Duc Fu is an extraction magician. Is of great help in securing the supply chain. And again, Ian will be talking about it. And then we've got Dr. Kelly Nareen and Dr. Jason Dyke, who are both very accomplished medical professionals, very strong scientists, worked on a large number of clinical trials. And if you looking back, they're also very strong in the commercialization of new drugs. Other than that, we've got Colin McClelland, who I don't think is on the line today, nor is Omar Gonzalez, but they round out the team. So like I said, it's a great opportunity. Neural has a very interesting approach, and it's a very strong team. And now I'm going to be handing over to Ian. Thank you very much. Enjoy the presentation.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm back. I forgot one more thing. There is an opportunity for Q&A today. If you have a question, there is a Q&A option that you can click on, and you can type in your question. And after Ian is done with the presentation, we'll come back and answer your questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Marc. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. For those of you who haven't heard about Neural Therapeutics, we are a biotech company that's focusing on a psychedelic drug called mescaline that Marc introduced earlier. Mescaline is a naturally sourced drug that comes from a variety of cacti, one which you see here in the spring. And basically what we will be doing is we will be working with the active ingredient, the mescaline, towards a pharmaceutical goal, and then using the rest of the plant towards a nutraceutical or dietary supplement, because there's value in the entire plant. We'll describe that a little bit later. Now, if you are familiar with the drug mescaline, you might also be familiar with the plant called peyote. That's where it's most commonly known. And peyote is basically a problematic solution for anybody that would be looking into mescaline, and that's because A, it's nearly extinct, and B, it is very, very important to the native indigenous people of North America. And for that reason alone, we decided not to look at that plant, but rather to look at another plant which is already being commercialized in South America today and for quite some time now. You can go to countries like Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, and you can go on a retreat with a shaman, for example, and have a mescaline experience. Many people do that. What we want to do is we want to bring the science to it, and San Pedro is the way to do that. San Pedro is a close runner-up to the same concentration as peyote, but it actually grows much faster. It's not nearly extinct, and it has a lot more mass that we can use to recover mescaline and the other good parts of the plant. Now, the history of mescaline. Mescaline has been around for a long time. In fact, mescaline is known as the very first psychedelic that was discovered. And Aldous Huxley wrote about it in his famous Doors of Perception. It has been synthesized over 100 years ago. There's been a lot of experimental work that was done in the 50s and the 60s and in many clinical type trials with mescaline. It is an inherently safe drug that has been in use in human history use for nearly 6,000 years. About 5,700 years to be exact has been documented. And I believe most likely it's since humans crossed the land bridge into North America and we made our way down. So maybe 50,000 years ago or more. Now, why would you work with a plant-derived mescaline source? Well, we see that there are other companies and precedents for doing so. And we know about the benefits of the plant, which I will get into a little bit later. The precedents are companies that are doing extraction of cannabis, for example, producing CBD oil like Epidiolex, which is used for epilepsy. And then there's other drugs that are being extracted from magic mushrooms. Psilocybin extracts, for example, are being used and also going into clinical trials. The non-mescaline benefits of a cacti that bears mescaline, like San Pedro, are many. It has a high content of fiber, amino acids, vitamins, and it can also sequester fat in your diet. So if you want to reduce your fat intake, you can also use it there. So therefore, we believe that there is a marketplace and also benefit in looking at the entire plant. Where are we going with this in the pharmaceutical approach, which is by no mistake, this is our primary focus. Now, mescaline has demonstrated that it's been very effective in stress-related disorders. And the stress-related disorders are typically PTSD, depression, and substance use disorders. Well, since it's shown promise in that, we think that what you see here on the screen are also likely candidates, and particularly in blue, if we look at even the substance use disorder, which is a form of addiction, we can treat people with that. And it's a very large market. Turning to another market that you might have already heard of when you talk about psychedelics, you might hear about the macro dose versus the micro dose. And the macro dose is some people call it the hero's dose. This is where you take a very large dose and you have a hallucinogenic experience, and it's proven to be very therapeutic with the other psychedelics, which are well into the study. Professor David Nutt has done a wealth of work in this field. And then there's the microdose, which is a very small dose where it should not induce a hallucination because it's 1/10 of the same dose. And basically there's a market that people are already doing that. People in Silicon Valley have been doing it for years. A lot of veterans are currently doing it, and first responders, and they're doing it under the table in the black market. And we want to bring the science to it. We see a day when doctors will be able to prescribe this and people will be able to take home a mescaline derivative, for example. Mescaline has the longest lifetime of any of the psychedelics, any of the serotonin psychedelics that are available through nature. And we believe, therefore, it has the best potential to be the best microdoser available. Now, looking at our R&D roadmap, we have a roadmap that takes us into a variety of areas in terms of the pharmaceutical, the primary active ingredient being mescaline, then the part that is without mescaline, and you can see there are 5 target drugs here that we can work with, or 5 target substances, because we can take it from the plant. If we started with the synthetic, we wouldn't have that many. And it really is to our benefit to have that, so we can squeeze every bit of goodness out of that plant that we can capitalize on and make use of. And so what we're looking at is creating a dietary supplement out of the residual material after we've done the extraction, and then using advanced chemistry, maybe playing with some synthetic hybrid combinations of the naturally formed mescaline to create a compound. Where are we today? Well, we've been spending quite some time securing up our supply chain. We're actively working in Peru. This is where we started because the plant originates there. San Pedro originates there. It's well known that it has its highest concentration, and it grows wild, and it's fairly abundant. And actually, we work with a nursery down there. A number of nurseries work with this plant down there as they use it for grafting onto. We've been working in getting our permits and getting our studies underway. We've been working with 2 chemistry labs down there. And then our next phase now is to jump into the pharmaceutical development. I'll describe that a little bit later. And then to later, or with the appropriate partner, when we will jump into the nutraceutical development, so that we're not distracted from the pharmaceutical play that we're looking at. A little bit about our history. So we're a little bit over, a couple of years old now. The company was acquired by what's now known as High Fusion. And then there were some scientific studies that were done by KGK Science and Imperial College, being David Nutt and his research team. And then a new management was brought on. That's when I came on board, and we decided to do our work in Peru and accelerate through what I call the fundamental preliminary chemistry, where we have been working with various authorities in Peru, working with cactus providers, and we have a couple of universities that we're working with, a couple of university labs. In the process of this last year, we also created a technology around a new extraction. So we have a patent pending procedure and technology for our own extraction, and we can actually work on other psychedelics with that. And we've kicked off a cultivation project in Peru. And I also note that we also did a publication with Dr. Nutt and his former graduate student with the entire team. And I'll show that next. We signed an agreement with Folium Labs, a Canadian company that makes drug delivery, advanced drug delivery technologies. We look forward to doing some exploration with them and doing some formulation. And then concurrently, towards the tail end of last year, we did a study with Memorial University, who dove into the availability or the market of our dietary supplement. And basically, the summary was that we now know that our thesis is correct. There is a significant market. It's growing, and we have a demographic. We know what form to make the dietary supplement, and we know what sort of product line it should enter into. So it was a very, very beneficial study. For those of you who are interested, this is our publication with Dr. Nutt. And why did we do that? Well, we did that because we wanted to basically demonstrate that Neurotherapeutics has a very, very strong team of scientists. The bulk of our advisory board are there with Kelly and Joanna and Jason Dyke and myself. And basically, this is a summary paper that raises the level of mescaline knowledge, while we also retained, of course, any intellectual gains that we did not publish in this. Basically, we wanted to control the narrative of mescaline. This year, we're off to a great start. We've also signed an agreement with a company that is based in the Caribbean country of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's an American-owned, American-controlled corporation. They are experts in chemistry. They have an exclusive contract with the Medical Cannabis Association of the country. Regularly, they deal with the highest level of government there, dealing with the Minister of Health, for example, having direct access to the decision makers. And just a little note about that country, they really want to make and bring the psychedelic health and wellness industry there. They want to be this Silicon Valley. So it seemed like a natural play for us to also expand our R&D a little bit closer from Peru. We're not going to abandon Peru. Peru has not been a problem. We have great data still coming from them, but we're going to expand there. We'll be doing our optimizations of our extraction. We will look forward to doing some cultivation expansion and production on that country. In addition to that, very recently, we signed an LOI with Myant Inc., a Canadian company based here in Toronto. And that actually will make a formal announcement about that tomorrow. But this is a very, very exciting and game-changing opportunity to work with a leader in IoT, advanced wearable technologies. As you can see on the bottom part of the screen, there is a picture of people's undergarments. This company has been in the textile industry in its previous ownership for many years. And they know how to make textiles. They've hired a very high-level team of R&D experts in the field of sensory technologies. And they've been experimenting and developing new technologies and have a Health Canada approved technology already available called Skin. And Skin is that product that you see there, and it's basically measuring physiological parameters. So with Skin, they can, your phone collects the data. It goes out to an algorithm that monitors your data. Basically, in this case, right now, it's cardiology, physiology. So they're measuring an EKG continuously 24/7. And that data goes out to a team of experts where cardiologists are available 24/7 to notify you in case you're having any event. This is a great opportunity to partner with a company like this because we can bring them into our human trials. We can develop what is known as the psychological, the physiological experience parameters, and be able to build out to service the other parts of the industry. This really makes it scalable for the industry to deliver psychedelics, because people can be prescribed their psychedelics. They can go home, for example, they can look at their phone and see a message that says, okay, everything's fine. You're just having an experience. Or maybe you'll get another message that says, we no longer detect any physiological parameters that you're having an experience, but we don't recommend you drive for the next 12 hours. That sort of thing is what we're looking forward to developing with Myant. And I'm very, very excited about that opportunity and working with Caribbean Gold in St. Vincent. So I've alluded to some of the milestones. I won't go over every single one. In light blue is what you see what we've done over the past year. Again, reiterating that we have some intellectual property gains that we're going to use to leverage to gain additional intellectual property. We have developed methods to do a variety of different chemistries, including also the DNA of the plants. So we know what plant we're going to be cultivating. And we're moving now into the phase where we're going to be doing some fine tweaking and some optimization of our extraction and production this next year, and moving into trials. Now I have John Durfy on with me here. John?
Yeah, just I'll go quickly over the pro forma cap table. We raised a little over 800,000 at 7.5 cents earlier in 2022. So we now currently have just under 40 million shares outstanding, which is a pre-money value of just under at 10 cents. The deal's done at 10 cents of just under $4 million. We're raising between $1.5 to $3.5 million. We've got the $1.5 million in here just to show you at 10 cents. That's an extra 15 million. And the other is our partner owns a piece of this company, has helped us drive through the whole plan of arrangement, our financing, etc. So our post-money shares outstanding is 57 million at 10 cents, is just under $6 million. So a very reasonable valuation. I think, you've all seen sort of the ups and downs of the micro cap market over the last couple of years, especially in the psychedelic space. So we've obviously knocked back our pricing to make it very appealing. So that's sort of where we stand today. If you want to just flip to the next page. So as you can see, just down the lower piece first. So High Fusion after the spinout will have about 34%, and after the financing at 1.5 million, we'll have about 23%. Obviously, that will be lower with the if we get 3.5 million in the financing. Right now, we own just above 45%. And just to give you a little bit of an update on the spinout, so we've basically finished up, and we're just sending it in for legal approval and court approval for the plan of arrangement. And once that's done, there'll be a mailing to shareholders, and there will be a shareholder meeting around the middle. We're hoping to have it around the middle of March. After that point in time, once there's approval, it will actually be a listed company, and the next step would then actually bring it into that's actually tradable. So that's sort of where High Fusion stands. Like I said, there's going to be a piece that will be spun out to its shareholders. There's a piece that High Fusion will hold on to, and that will continue to be diluted down post the financing. There's the seed investors. That was the group that came in for the 800,000. There's officers, directors. Myself and the CFO personally have put in approximately 200,000 into the company. And then there's other shareholders. So that's sort of where the pro forma ownership table is. And just above that is the principal, what we're going to, the use of funds schedule, as you can see, and as expected for a biotech company, a little over half of the raise. And again, we're using the 1.5 million as our example here, is for R&D. As you can see broken down, the majority of it is obviously going to be for the medical side, and a small piece for the nutraceutical side. And then G&A and working capital account for the other approximately 1/3. And then there's actually the cost of doing this plan of arrangement listing, and with the closing fees make up the remainder of the dollars. I'm going to flip to the next page.
Yeah. Okay. So Marc, you want to mute, John? Marc has already introduced some of the team members. I'd just like to reiterate that we are very happy to have the advice of Professor David Nutt, who has administered more psychedelics to humans than anyone in human history, and is very keen to study and work with us on mescaline, because we believe there is a unique pathway, because we know that it's very similar to other molecules, but there is also, for every psychedelic, a unique therapy and unique experience, and not one drug fits all. We need as many different types of psychedelics available to deal with the growing mental illness that we see. One stat that was not mentioned earlier is that 1/4 of the world, nearly 2 billion people, are diagnosed today with mental illness. It's astounding. And how are we going to deal with that? And this is one way we deal with it. Duke Fu was introduced earlier. And Kelly Noreen and Jason Dyke, who you see here. Very happy to have them all also. Very high level team of scientists, and I'm happy to play along with them as a scientist too. We've already introduced the leadership team. You see some of the similar faces. We have John, who's on with us here, and Colin, who is had a number of C-level jobs in a variety of different industries, a very strong financial background, and he will play a role as our independent auditor. In summary, we believe that this is a great time to invest. We believe that we have a compelling entry point with an evaluation of 3.9 million. And it's an exceptionally large opportunity to get in with a drug that's not readily being studied today. We are, breaking new ground, and we can service a lot of people with this. We're unique in that way. A lot of the hard work that others wouldn't go through, we've already surpassed with going through the knowledge of the plant and so forth, and doing the preliminary chemistry work that we're doing, and so far that we have created barriers to entry, and we are very unique. I have a very strong team that supports me. I'm very happy to be on this mission. It provides value, provides purpose, and it provides meaning, and hopefully a lot of value for our shareholders.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ian. Hi, everyone again. As I mentioned earlier on, we're now going to head into the Q&A. We've got a few questions lined up already. We were also emailed a number of questions in the days leading up to this webinar. If you've got a question at the bottom of your screen, there should be a functionality for you to click on Q&A. And within the Q&A, you can type in your question and we'll deal with this. So the first questions we have is from Ned. Ned was asking if the high fusion and neural shares are the same. You want to take that, Ian, or?
Well, I think John, for now, you want to take that?
Sure. So just to be clear, so the question is, are they the same?
Are the neural and fusion shares the same?
No. So just to sort of reiterate, as we go through, it's a separate company now. Right now, due to some ownership, it's a subsidiary. It's being spun out. It'll be a standalone listed company after the approval by the judge in the next few weeks, and after approval of the shareholders of High Fusion, it'll be a separate company. It'll be separate shares under a separate ticker.
Okay. Thanks very much. Oh, sorry, myself. Echo. We've got a few other questions. Like I said, some questions were mailed in, so we'll go with the first one there. Ian, what type of return can we expect? There was a question from James.
Okay, well, thank you, James. So that's relative to our peers, we offer investors a very unique opportunity at a very low valuation. One thing I'd like to mention is that this is really an important year for psychedelics. We see that nonprofit organization called MAPS, which really led this stage here. They've been in existence for about 37 years. They were fast-tracked by the FDA for a drug called MDMA, or ecstasy, the street name. And that drug is fully expected to be FDA approved this year. It's going to change the game for all of the drugs that are on this schedule, where mescaline is one of them. And so getting in it at a low valuation point right now is a great time, because we expect that there'll be an industry upswing, a large potential upswing here in this next year. Also, then, looking at how another source is The Economist. The Economist published, the beginning of this year in January, the 5 things to look for in 2023. The very first was India, and I think the second was the fact that this is going to be the year of psychedelics and psychedelics adoption.
Yes.
So this is a very important. We have a lot of industry, and a lot of the media is looking forward to it. We see the U.S. There's quite a number of states that are gearing up for this, and we see provinces already enacting and paying for this already. So it's a very good point to get into right now.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that, valuation enhancement comes from as we meet milestones. As you go through an IND, as you move through phase 1, the valuation continues to tick up, and as you move towards a phase 1, often valuations approach $100 million. So it's keeping us accountable, watching how we perform versus our milestones, and that should perform well in terms of our stock price. And stock price, like I said, basically tracks as we track our milestones.
It's actually a very good point, John, and it segues really nicely into the next question from Haley. She's asking, why should we invest now? maybe as an answer, I can take this one. First, further to what John was saying, in hitting the milestones, that's how you generate value. Now, the first two milestones are, or two of the first milestones are the preclinical and phase 1 studies, which focus on toxicity and safety in humans. As Ian has mentioned before, humans, we've got recorded history of over 6,500 years of people using mescaline safely and happily. So while we can't ever, give an absolute here, we're very confident of the outcomes for the preclinical and the phase 1 study. But back to Haley's question, why should we invest now? So psychedelics had a bit of a rough ride the second half of the last year, down to a few reasons. Like the cannabis sector, investment sentiment was off the scale earlier on, led to extreme high valuations for a lot of companies. Some companies were more capital market constructs than real operating companies, such as Neural is. That kind of reinforced itself. We ended in a terrible market climate in the last few months of the year. That basically resulted in some people cycling out of the sector. However, since the beginning of the year, we've seen this across the board, but it's especially strong in a few sectors, and psychedelics is one of them. We see that things are turning around. We see that people are understanding that the adoption of psychedelics is going to be driven by science and by healthcare providers. This is not a recreational play as much of cannabis was. This is an actually science-driven development that is promising to make a huge impact on a massive problem that we as a global society are heading into. So that realization is trickling through into valuations. We see liquidity going up. We see people coming in. People are making investments. We've only been going for 2 weeks roughly with the fundraise, and we already got a significant amount of commitments in. We also see that people really understand the magnitude of the opportunity that we're looking at ahead. The stat that you've seen, the $6 trillion stat, it's a humongous number, but it comes from a very creditable source. And then also we're seeing increased support and also cheerleading from reputable organizations and publications. Ian mentioned The Economist. It's obviously one of the most renowned economic publications out there. They're calling psychedelics one of the must things to watch this coming year. So as a result of all of that, we see valuation slowly coming back up. So we think that this year will really be a breakout year for psychedelics. And I'm going to say something that, I'm sort of paraphrasing a quote from someone in another industry. But pretty much today is the smallest the legal psychedelics industry will ever be. We're only going to see more and more adoption driven by actual practitioners. With that in mind, we think that the valuations as we're seeing them today, and as we mentioned, Neural Therapeutics is coming out at a 3.9 million pre-money valuation, which is exceptionally low, but it's sort of reflecting the current market. People also get half a warrant. So they're having the opportunity to jump in at a price point that we'll likely never see again. I mean, you can't ever give absolutes there, but we're very confident that with the execution path that we're on, the way we've been executing and the milestones that we will be hitting over the coming year, that we're in an exceptionally good position to drive value. So the case for investing now is simple. This is the smallest this industry will ever be. We think these are the lowest valuations we will see, especially for companies that are executing well, with a clean operation, a clean cap structure, and all that stuff, which Neural has. I don't think we're going to see these valuations again. So that would be my answer as to why should we invest now. And that again segues nicely into another question, which I'm going to say is either for Ian or for Alex. How's the fundraising been going so far, and how much money have you got committed?
I can answer that. In just over about 2 weeks or so, we have about over 800,000 that we've been able to get from indications, and we're awaiting response from other investors who have also put their finger up that they want to come to play. So it's been a pretty solid 2 weeks, despite the market conditions.
Yeah, exactly. And then that kind of feeds into what I was saying earlier. We see that the
there's another question here, Marc.
Very good. Okay, let's go for that.
I just want to say one thing. Over a third of the current basically soft/hard circle is with U.S. investors. So I think that's important to know.
There was a question about how the maybe you want to take that, John, how High Fusion will receive the shares as part of the spin out. I'm not sure if you covered that or if you want to reiterate it again as part of the court action.
Oh, how will the High Fusion shareholders receive it? You will basically, it basically gets done automatically by the transfer agent. So you'll see the Neural Therapeutics, whatever percentage of your shareholdings that is in your account.
It's on a pro rata basis.
Yeah, it will be like a dividend distribution, basically.
Whatever that percentage is, will be in your account.
I mean, I've gone through these spin outs before. It's typically as a dividend distribution. And as John said, the shares will be landing automatically in your account, and it all goes through the transfer agent. So that's very good. We have a few other questions that came in. You probably mentioned this already, Ian, but probably would be good to go over again. What ailments are you targeting, or what therapeutic indications are you targeting, and why are these such interesting markets for you?
Yeah, that's a great point. I always like to dive into a bit of the science with things. And so what we've seen, as you alluded to earlier into the introduction, is that there are people that benefit from mescaline and mescaline natural derived sources. So there's actually a number of different papers that talk about studies where we see the populations who have ingested mescaline have also, benefited significantly from anxiety, depression, and alcohol use disorders. So we can then look at the stress-related disorders, because those all fit sort of into that category. And now we can look at other areas of focus, like looking at like opioid addiction, where we also see a great void and a great need for dealing with the fentanyl crisis, for example. In addition to that, we know that San Pedro, people who ingest San Pedro have reduced cardiometabolic disease. So we see reduced effects of diabetes, and also cardiovascular disease. And we don't know really if that's related to the mescaline or related to the rest of the plant, which is why we also see a benefit in looking at both segments with the right partner for the dietary supplement. But in terms of the pharmaceutical play, it's very strong. We have a very strong set of evidence. In fact, today, in North America, there are religious groups, primarily indigenous peoples, who utilize the peyote cactus that I introduced earlier, and they benefit largely from group therapies, which is an indicator that we could also be looking at scalable therapy combinations, and also dealing with family-based crisis, dealing also with things like alcoholism, have been very, very significantly dealt with through the use of mescaline naturally derived products.
Okay, cool. I've got another question. In looking at how the world would change post-COVID, one of the sort of dynamics that we're seeing is that there's going to be a much greater emphasis by people, but also by healthcare organizations, to really drive prevention as part of people's sort of medical routine or wellness routine. And part of prevention is, taking supplements and things like that. And you talked briefly about the San Pedro plant as a potential source for nutraceuticals. And you also mentioned that you're looking to develop that with a partner. So the question is twofold. A, what are the advantages of working with a partner? And B, what kind of a nutraceuticals do you think will come out of any development work you'll be doing with the partner.
So I think the advantage of working with a partner in this area is that we've been in discussion with a number of entities that have been doing this for many years. Some of which are in the billion-dollar range companies. They know how to bring these products to market. They have shelf space. They know how to develop them. It can lower the cost of production, and also they have other resources at their fingertips that we can benefit from R&D. Therefore, and in terms of how I envision a form, it'll be most likely an oral form, and there will also be a benefit of coupling with a partner to make use of their brand recognition. That'll help it to move. So I think that there's a number of reasons why we want to focus with this development with a partner that are beneficial, and we can then use that money to re-inject into our pharma play to accelerate our wins there and increase our value.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, I think we pretty much covered all the questions we had. Again, if people want to ask a question, I'll poll the floor once more. You can type them into the Q&A section. Otherwise, if you have no questions now, but you later today or whenever feel like I should have asked something, you can email us and we will get back to you. And I think all the data is available anyway, our contact details.
info@neurotherapeutics.ca. Is that where they should email?
That's probably easiest, yeah, and then distribute it to whomever would be the best person to answer that question. Okay, on that note, we have no further questions, so thank you very much, everyone. I'll hand back to Ian for some final words.
Yes, well, for those of you who are already investors, I want to thank you for your time today and for your commitment and your sustained interest in therapeutics, neurotherapeutics, and also for people who are new to neurotherapeutics, please feel free to reach out to me and or write at info@neurotherapeutics.ca. Happy to answer your questions, happy to have dialogue one-on-one, and to explain why we believe that this is really going to go somewhere and why we would love to have your participation. Thank you very much.